Jey Uso's betrayal of Roman Reigns didn't just shake the foundations of WWE, it ripped the heart out of a dynasty. For years, the Bloodline reigned as the most dominant force in professional wrestling, a family-driven empire built on loyalty, fear, and obedience to one man, the tribal chief, Roman Reigns. Jey Uso was at the center of that empire, once known as the right hand, the loyal warrior who took beatings, made sacrifices, and bowed his head when Roman demanded submission. But the moment Jey turned his back on Roman and joined forces with Seth Rollins, everything changed. This wasn't just another twist in a storyline. This was a cataclysmic event that redefined what power, betrayal, and brotherhood mean in WWE. It was a moment so raw, so emotionally violent, that fans didn't know whether to gasp or cheer. In that single act, years of loyalty, pain, and psychological warfare combusted into rebellion. Jey didn't just walk away from Roman Reigns, he shattered the illusion of control Roman had maintained for over 3 years. And he didn't do it alone. He did it by aligning himself with Roman's greatest adversary, Seth Rollins, a man who has made a career out of stabbing backs and burning bridges, but who this time has decided to build something lasting, not out of destruction but out of vindication. The moment happened backstage, away from the spotlight, away from the title belts and main event cameras. Roman thought he was mending the family, easing the tension after a brutal confrontation with Solo Sikoa and Jacob Fatu. But what he didn't realize was that Jey wasn't healing. He was preparing, gathering, planning. While Roman assumed Jey's silence was the result of fatigue or grief, Jey was forming a new alliance in secret, one that would turn WWE upside down. It all began in the shadows, where Seth Rollins stood waiting for Jey in a corridor dimly lit by flickering bulbs. No cameras, no microphones, just a whisper and a handshake. A single phrase spoken with cold certainty, "It's time." What they said beyond that is still unknown, but the consequences were immediate. Within 24 hours, WWE Creative pulled Jey from all Bloodline material. New promotional assets leaked internally showing Jey standing beside Seth, signaling a new movement forming in the heart of chaos. But why now? Why, after everything Jey had endured, after being forced to say, "I quit," inside hell in a cell, after taking chair shots for Roman's battles, after defending the very dynasty that held him down, would he finally snap? Because this wasn't about championships anymore. It wasn't about glory. It was about identity. It was about years of being treated like a pawn. It was about the emotional toll of being the good soldier while your commander reaped the spoils. Roman Reigns, in his rise as the tribal chief, didn't just dominate his opponents, he psychologically dismantled his family. And Jey Uso had been the primary victim of that manipulation. For years, Jey was told he was family, that he was valued, but only if he obeyed. That kind of control has a breaking point. And when it came, it didn't arrive in a blaze of pyro. It arrived with a superkick to the heart of the empire. The moment aired live on Raw. Roman, bloodied and exhausted, extended his arms for a reunion hug with Jey. And for a second, it looked like the Bloodline was healing. But then, like a thunderclap, Jey delivered a superkick that dropped Roman to his knees. The locker room watching backstage was paralyzed in shock. Cody Rhodes, prepping for a post-show match, dropped his water bottle and muttered, "They really did it." The arena exploded, some fans screamed in fury, others in awe. And then came the aftermath. Backstage reports said Roman disappeared into his dressing room and locked the door for hours. No contact with anyone, no Paul Heyman, no Solo, no statement, just silence. But even that silence spoke volumes. Paul Heyman eventually emerged, pale and trembling, whispering into a microphone that he had warned Roman that loyalty wasn't something passed down, it had to be earned. The kingdom, he said, was burning. And this time, there might be nothing left to rebuild. Solo Sikoa appeared on SmackDown in a cold, isolated promo, saying simply, "If you turn your back on us, we turn our back on you." But what was more chilling than his words was what he didn't say. He never mentioned Roman Reigns, never referred to the tribal chief. That omission was louder than any declaration of war. Then came the segment that shattered every expectation. WWE announced that Seth Rollins and Jey Uso would appear together live on Raw, unscripted. Fans packed the arena in anticipation. Chants of, "We want Roman," were drowned out by signs that read, "Jey was right," and "End the Bloodline." Seth walked out first, dressed in black and gold, World Heavyweight Championship shining like a war medal on his shoulder. But there was no grin, no flamboyance, only solemn purpose. Then came Jey Uso. No dance, no smile, just a slow, deliberate walk to the ring. When he took the mic, he said 5 words that will echo forever: I did what he wouldn't. The crowd erupted. And when Seth handed him the mic, the two locked eyes, men once defined by Roman Reigns now reborn as leaders of the rebellion. Seth declared they weren't a faction. They were a movement, a resistance, a future built by those once betrayed. A new logo flashed, a serpent eating its own tail, symbolizing rebirth, with the words, "The resistance begins," underneath. Backstage, the mood was shifting. Jimmy Uso was seen pacing in confusion. Jacob Fatu punched a wall. Solo sat with his head down, fists clenched. And still, no Roman. No sound, no presence, just dread. When Roman Reigns finally emerged days later, it was like a funeral procession. Dressed in black, no lay, no championship, he walked to the ring in silence. The crowd didn't know whether to cheer or mourn. He picked up the mic and, in a calm, deadly voice, spoke words that sent chills through the arena. "You think I didn't see this coming? I made you, Jey. And now I'll unmake you." He promised war, not swift, but inevitable. Not explosive, but calculated. Seth and Jey had declared a revolution. Roman was promising a reckoning. And just days later, Seth Rollins was ambushed during his entrance by a hooded figure, likely sent by Roman. The attack was fast, brutal, and symbolic. Roman was playing chess while the resistance was rallying. But it wasn't just about retaliation. It was about sending a message: I am still here. Meanwhile, Seth and Jey kept building. Teasers emerged online. A dark room, a jacket marked with Drew McIntyre's hammer. A cryptic audio clip of Sami Zayn saying, "I tried to walk away. Now I'm ready." It was clear, this wasn't a gimmick. It was an uprising, a movement of the betrayed, the discarded, the misused. And with every week, the resistance grew stronger. During a promo by Cody Rhodes about honor and legacy, the broadcast was hijacked. Static cut in, video flashes of Roman falling, Seth standing tall, Drew's glare, Sami's anguish. Then the phrase, "This is not a civil war. This is a reckoning." The screen went black. The crowd lost its mind. The resistance had struck again. SmackDown opened with eerie footage of an abandoned Bloodline locker room. A leather jacket on a chair. A crimson lay on a table. Roman nowhere. The throne, for the first time, looked vacant. And then, on the following Raw, Paul Heyman emerged alone and declared with a trembling voice that what they built had been betrayed, and that Roman's judgment was coming. He fell to his knees, whispering into the mic, "We await your judgment." Fans weren't watching a feud, they were witnessing the collapse of an empire. But behind the scenes, even greater unrest stirred. Reports emerged that Jacob Fatu was demanding a match with Jey Uso, only to be told to wait. Tension was growing. The Bloodline was no longer a united force, it was splintered, uncertain, directionless. Meanwhile, Seth and Jey unveiled more pieces of their rebellion. Merchandise began flooding online with Jey's silhouette over Roman's fallen body. A new generation of fans began cheering for the resistance, not because they hated Roman, but because they saw themselves in Jey, used, doubted, and finally awakened. And when Roman finally reappeared, his eyes weren't filled with rage, they were filled with calculation. His war wouldn't be about matches. It would be about dismantling everything his enemies believed in. Seth and Jey may have lit the flame, but Roman Reigns would bring the firestorm. And WWE, it would never be the same again. Because the resistance isn't a storyline. It's a revolution. And Jey Uso, the once loyal soldier, has become its fearless general.